Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Long time no see. Thank you very much for your patience. And what a better way to start off all these series again by looking at Napoleon. Epic History TV has been very busy in the past 8 or so months that I haven't made a video. The last one was the Napoleon review, and there's quite a lot of content. I mean, he's not only covered more of the Napoleon series, but they have also covered the beginnings of America as well, like America's first battle that it lost, and all sorts of other content as well. I believe there was some content there in the Middle East. Lots of stuff to get to, stuff that I will be watching to, reacting to, and hopefully providing some commentary on, because that's what I like to do in these videos, and not just sit here, stare at a screen, laugh, and then say thank you very much for watching. I try where I can to provide commentary, and admittedly, this is a topic that I do not know that much about, unfortunately. It's Napoleon in Egypt, Battle of the Pyramids, 1798. This is, I think, one of 2 videos, I believe. There might even be more of Napoleon in Egypt, but I'm excited to look into this. Napoleon's very young. As we know, he flees Egypt, leaving all his men behind to go back to France. So I'm curious to see what actually happened here and get a little bit more into detail. If you haven't already yet, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Let's get into it. Right? Okay.
May 1798.
3D.
A massive French invasion force sails across the Mediterranean. 55,000 men, aboard more than 300 ships, escorted by 13 ships of the line. Aboard the most powerful of these, the 120-gun L'Orient, sails General Napoleon Bonaparte. France's celebrated hero of the war in Italy has received new orders from his government.
Yeah, and just to sum that up, if you haven't seen that series, I also did a reaction video to that, but go check out the originals too by Epic History TV. And to make a very long story short, Napoleon considered the third front, right, against a massive war against Austria and other nations as well. And Italy is basically considered the third front, the one that, we're going to lose it anyway, so we'll send this young upstart Napoleon down towards that front. The men there, they're embittered, they're completely worn out, tired, supplies are limited, and so it's thought to be, you know, maybe he'll make a valiant effort, but that front is lost anyways. Napoleon goes on and captures it all. Just wins it all. I won't spoil it, but he takes a completely worn out, demotivated crew and goes into some of his most epic moments where he's actually moving the artillery himself, right, and getting right into the heat of battle. And this is sort of where the legend is born, is through that Italy campaign. So at this point, Napoleon is known, right? He's famous throughout France, and he's now seizing on to Egypt.
He is to lead an expeditionary force east to Egypt, the wealthiest province of the Ottoman Empire. And to all educated Europeans, an ancient land of mystery and wonder.
Yes, Rosetta Stone, as we'll find out.
After 6 years of war in Europe, the French Republic faces one last remaining enemy: Great Britain.
This will not end.
The conquest of Egypt will strike a powerful blow against the British, disrupting their trade in the eastern Mediterranean and threatening their connections to India and the East. These profitable trade networks help fuel the British war effort.
And of course, right, going towards through the Suez Canal, which, as you know, is still being used to this day, still a very important shipping route, as we've seen through some of the issues that are going on in the Middle East currently, with shipping routes being disrupted by forces, shall we say, in Yemen. And yeah, obviously India being one of the great providers of wealth to Britain at this time, having this shipping lane being open and being controlled, very, very, very important for Britain. Very strategically important, because the other thing too is that if it can't run its empire, if it's blocked off to its main source of wealth and source of income, you're going to have some serious problems here for the British Empire.
What's more,
spoilers, this is not going to be the first time that France tries to take this part of Egypt.
It will extend France's revolutionary, civilizing mission to the people of Egypt.
Yes.
Liberating them.
And if I may, that's one big difference too. In this book, of course it's not there. It's in the other room. Of course it isn't, but it's on the origins of totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt. One of the interesting things between how the British colonized and how the French colonized is that the French genuinely believed that they could bring their way of life, so to say, you know, égalité, fraternité, sorry for the terrible French, to these sort of what they would have considered uncivilized people, right? Whereas the British did not try and sort of take this mentality. Algiers, I mean, was considered to be not just some colony overseas, right? Not a part of the French Empire, but a part of France itself, so to say. This is obviously simplifying it quite a bit, but that's one of the key importances between French colonialism and British colonialism that we would see.
From superstition and feudalism. France's corrupt and avaricious government, the Directory, sees two further benefits from the campaign. The opportunity to acquire tremendous riches and to get the alarmingly popular and ambitious General Bonaparte far away from Paris, where plots and coups are never far from anyone's mind.
Yep.
Napoleon is thrilled by the expedition, which he has done much to promote and organize himself. It is a chance to win fresh glory and to walk in the footsteps of his heroes, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great.
Sure.
Like Alexander, Napoleon even has fanciful notions of marching on to India to attack the British there. Europe is a molehill, he had told his secretary, Bourrienne. We must set off for the Orient. That is where all the greatest glory has been achieved.
I wonder if that was sort of like when he obviously went and took Russia many years later. Well, he didn't take Russia, he failed. I wonder if that was one of his ambitions too, was to keep marching down then through the Caucasus or something along these lines. I don't think that was ever talked about in the last series. I have no idea, but if you do know, write a comment down below. I'm actually kind of curious if maybe that was his long-term plan.
But the Mediterranean is dangerous water for the French. While the Republic's armies have won great victories on land, Britain has cemented its status as the dominant naval power of the age, with decisive victories over French allies, the Spanish at Cape St. Vincent and the Dutch at Camperdown. Rear Admiral Sir Horatio Nelson and his squadron of 14 ships of the line now prowl the Mediterranean.
The 3D's weird. I gotta be honest, it's weird.
Nelson knows a large French fleet has just left Toulon, but does not know its destination, which remains a closely guarded secret. Undetected, the French expedition sails south along the Italian coast. On the 9th of June, it arrives off Malta. The island is ruled by the Knights of St. John, a religious military order dating back to the Crusades.
I did not know
But the
that.
French have decided that they want it for a naval base, and a thorn in the side of the British. In 1565, the Knights had famously held out against a vast Ottoman army for 3 months.
Maybe that could be a cool video to watch as well. That would be interesting. I don't know anything about Malta, so maybe that could be really cool.
Now, despised by the locals, divided amongst themselves, the Knights surrender to Napoleon in just 2 days.
Classic.
During his 6 days in Malta, Napoleon overhauls its archaic government, establishes schools, abolishes slavery, and requisitions money and supplies. Then he...
And there's lots to criticize about Napoleon, you know, as much as you can criticize a man who's been dead for more than 150 years at this point, and yet that's just amazing. Sorry, more than 200 years at this point. That's just amazing. You're 6 days in a country, you know, like, you ever been on vacation, right? Maybe go on vacation for a week, maybe you go to Malta, right? you ever think of ambitions of being like, you know, if I had 6 days in this place and rather than hanging out on the beach and drinking pina coladas and getting drunk, I think I should abolish slavery, overhaul their government, build new schools, and completely change this country, and then leave, right? And then you take the next Ryanair flight home. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Sails for Egypt, leaving General Vaubois and a 5,000-strong garrison to hold the island. But where is the Royal Navy? Back in May, Nelson's squadron had been dispersed by gales.
Ooh,
he has now regrouped, correctly guessed Napoleon's destination, and is racing to intercept. If he can catch the French, British seamanship and gunnery all but guarantee the destruction of Napoleon's fleet. Then, a lucky break for the French. On the night of the 22nd, Nelson's squadron passes within a few miles of the French fleet. But thanks to heavy fog and darkness, neither side is even aware of the other's presence. The British squadron sails on to Alexandria, where they find no sign of the French. An exasperated Nelson waits 24 hours before heading north to continue his search. Just hours later, the first of Napoleon's ships arrive off Alexandria.
Sorry, perhaps I misunderstood that, but then if he... Sorry, that's a dog. If he had guessed his location of where he was going, which was Egypt, why did he then sail north? Or perhaps I misunderstood that, but maybe he thought that they were temporarily in Cyprus? I don't know, I'm kind of curious why they did that. The dog's pawing at the door. One moment, please.
Napoleon, aware that British warships are in the area, wants to disembark as quickly as possible. 5,000 French infantry go ashore at night, storm Alexandria the next morning, and quickly overpower its garrison. The rest of the French army lands safely. Napoleon has brought 38,000 troops to Egypt, mostly veterans of the Army of Italy.
Which again were those men that were completely exhausted, completely, you know, at their wits' end, and then they go on to have this amazing victory and further want to continue and follow Napoleon into more glory. 5
infantry divisions are commanded by Generals Bon, Desaix, Kleber, Menou, and Renier. The single cavalry division is led by the towering figure of Thomas Alexandre Dumas. He is France's first black general, born in what's now Haiti, to a French aristocrat and enslaved African woman. He has already won fame for his actions in Italy, where the Austrians had nicknamed him the Black Devil.
Crazy.
There are more familiar faces from Italy. Napoleon's chief of staff, the indefatigable General Berthier, and brigade commanders Generals Murat, Lannes, and Marmont.
Marat and Marmont.
The army is also accompanied by 167 scientists, scholars, artists, and assorted experts, even a hot air balloonist. Collectively, they are known as the Savants, and have come to study Egypt's historical and natural wonders.
Yes.
But they and Napoleon find Alexandria a bitter disappointment. The fabled city of antiquity, founded by Alexander himself, has been reduced by centuries of earthquakes and neglect to a ramshackle town of 6,000 inhabitants. Egypt is nominally ruled by the Ottoman Empire. In reality, power lies with local Mamluk warlords. 2 in particular, Murad Bey and Ibrahim Bey. Mamluks were originally slave soldiers who once served the Islamic Caliphate. Superb horsemen and fearless warriors, they now rule Egypt with an iron fist, expropriating its wealth and leaving its peasants in poverty. To most Egyptians, they are despised foreign overlords, a situation that Napoleon hopes to exploit with clever propaganda. To the people of Egypt, he proclaims, "I am come to restore your rights and punish usurpers. I reverence God, his prophet, and the Quran."
Wow. That's a heck of a claim. Man.
Meanwhile, Murad and Ibrahim summon Mamluk warlords to the Al-Azhar Mosque in Cairo. Here, they agree to gather an army to crush the invaders.
Actually, the question is, what was sort of Napoleon's take on religion? I don't remember it ever being mentioned that he was a particularly religious man. I actually don't know. I'm curious. I'm going to look it up afterwards, but if you know, write it down below, obviously, because I'm actually kind of curious. I don't know much about his sort of stance on religion at this point. I mean, okay, obviously outside of revolutionary values and the Catholic Church, yada, 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 right? But just in terms of, was he an atheist, along those lines. Not the sort of organizational religion, that's quite obvious, right? But in terms of his personal beliefs.
Napoleon believes his best option is to strike quickly. Less than a day after his troops finish landing, he begins his advance on Cairo. But he misjudges the blistering climate and the barren, windswept landscape.
Not a nice place.
He forces the pace, even after his men run out of water and are consumed by thirst. Hundreds collapse and die. A few kill themselves to escape the suffering. Bedouin horsemen circle the French like vultures. Stragglers that fall into their hands are robbed, tortured, and killed. Even old comrades like Lannes and Murat are involved in heated conversations about Napoleon's decision-making. The army takes 4 days to cover the 45 miles to Damanhur, where mercifully they're able to rest, drink, and trade for food. It's not a moment too soon. News arrives that a large force of Mamluks under Murad Bey is approaching from the southeast. The French advance to meet them at Shubrahit on the banks of the Nile. As 4,000 Mamluk horsemen come into view, the French marvel at their brightly coloured outfits, embellished with gold and jewels, and their many ornate weapons, including pistols, swords, daggers, and lances. Murad boasts that he will sever Frenchmen heads like slicing watermelons in a field. But for all their bravado and panache, the Mamluks have neither the discipline nor tactics to face a trained modern army. When Napoleon forms his troops into giant squares, the Mamluk cavalry can only circle impotently, unable to break through the walls of French bayonets. Scores are shot from the saddle. After 2 hours, the Mamluks call off their attack and retreat. They have suffered around 1,000 casualties. The French have scarcely lost a man.
Oh my, wow. Okay, 1,000 to 20. I just wanted to say this is reminding me of some of the, famously some of the last cavalry charges in the Second World War, where you had cavalry charges against armored divisions. And this is obviously not the same. This is obviously completely different cultures, but nonetheless, you just have shifting times, right? Shifting warfare, different strategies, different technology as well. And well, you can see the results of cavalry sort of just impotently wandering around these sort of modern tactics that they have. And you have 20 French casualties and 1,000 Mamluk. Wow. Oh my God.
The victory is a much-needed morale boost for Napoleon's men after the hardships of the desert. The Mamluks fall back to Mbaba, a small town on the banks of the Nile, across the river from Cairo. Here, within sight of Egypt's fabled pyramids 9 miles to the south, they will face the invader with their full force.
Now it's just full of people trying to sell you trinkets when you visit the pyramids. 40 centuries. I mean, what an amazing sight too, right? I mean, you're some guy from Toulon, right? Or you're some guy from Nice that's just, you know, he was a peasant, and then maybe he was, you know, he either joined the army willingly or he was conscripted, and now you're marching down into Egypt. You're looking at the pyramids. I mean, my great-grandfather on my mother's side, he was a part of the Gordon Highlanders, which was a Scottish regiment during the First World War. And there's this amazing picture of him he's in a kilt, right? And he's actually looking at the pyramids in Egypt because his regiment was there. I'm not sure of the year, but it was probably, I want to say 1917, 1916 or so. But yeah, I remember my grandfather saying to him that it was a breathtaking sight, right? And obviously at that point you had photographs of the pyramids that could be obviously given out to people. People would have known what they'd look like, but to see it in person, 1798, coming as a peasant from Toulon or from Nice, amazing, really.
On the sweltering afternoon of the 21st of July, Napoleon's forces approach Mbaba. He has 25,000 men, organized into 5 giant divisional squares, with cavalry and baggage inside, and cannon at every corner.
Yeah.
Murad, with characteristic boldness, has crossed to the west bank of the Nile, leaving Ibrahim behind. Their forces total many thousands, but sources disagree wildly on just how many. His elite Mamluk cavalry, 6,000 strong, are deployed between the small village of Biktil and the well-fortified town of Mbaba, which is garrisoned by a mix of Ottoman infantry and peasant militia.
I wonder what the distance between these two are.
Napoleon's plan is simple: to drive through the enemy centre and crush their right flank against the river.
Yep.
At 3:30 p.m, Dessay and Renier's divisions begin their advance. But as they move across the broken ground, their formation becomes disordered. Murad spots his chance and unleashes his cavalry. The Mamluks thunder forward at lightning speed. Dessay and Renier react just in time and close ranks. The French hold their fire until the last moment, then unleash a devastating volley. Horses and riders are sent tumbling. The survivors have no way to get to grips with the enemy, who continue pouring deadly fire into their midst. The Mamluks wheel back to regroup, but more charges meet the same result. Many Mamluks simply give up and flee the field.
Yikes.
Napoleon orders the divisions of Bon and Vial to move forward.
Do they have naval reinforcements here that are also going? Yeah, I guess it looks like it. Huh.
Once more, the Mamluk cavalry charge. Once more, the wave of horsemen shatters on French musketry and bayonets.
Bloodbath.
With the enemy cavalry broken, Bon and Vival's men pour into Mbaba. It is a slaughter. Those who are not killed flee into the Nile, where hundreds drown.
Oh, and then to be cut. Oh, God. Oh, that's dreadful. Oh, that's dreadful.
Murad Bey escapes with the remnants of his cavalry to Giza, from where he will withdraw to southern Egypt.
Yeah.
Ibrahim Bey watches the calamity unfold across the river, then withdraws with his men back to Cairo. It is a crushing, one-sided victory that takes just 2 hours. The Mamluks suffer more than 5,000 casualties, with heavy losses among their elite cavalry and leadership.
So by the time this video is done, it'll have been a quarter of this battle that took place. So, yeah.
French losses are less than 300.
Oh my
Napoleon, with his usual flair for PR, decides this great victory will be known as the Battle of the Pyramids, just in sight to the south. On the 24th of July, Napoleon enters Cairo. Parts of the city are abandoned and in ashes after being torched by the Mamluks in their frantic withdrawal. Napoleon observes it would be difficult to find a richer land and a more wretched, ignorant and brutish people. Nonetheless, Cairo is the heart of Egypt, a city of 600,000 inhabitants, and is in French hands. With the Mamluks scattered and on the run, Napoleon's dream of eastern conquest seems about to be realized. Just 8 days later, the dream is shattered.
Yep.
At sea, Nelson and the British Mediterranean Squadron have not given up their hunt for the French fleet. Finally, on the afternoon of the 1st of August, Nelson finds the French sheltering in Aboukir Bay. With 14 ships of the line against 13, he decides to attack that evening. The British win a complete and stunning victory.
Yep. And again, I mean, it's very, very well known at this point, but it needs to be said again. If Napoleon had have had the British Navy, that would have been it, right? But he could never, ever conquer the British Navy. That was what was standing between it, really. I mean, there's obviously other factors. It's not as simple as, well, one nation just had a lot of ships. But nonetheless, it's still, you can only imagine if he did have this. And so Napoleon is already getting a taste of naval defeat from the British. This would carry on.
The giant French flagship, L'Orient, is destroyed in a massive explosion. By the time it's over, the British have destroyed or captured 11 French ships of the line and taken more than 3,000 prisoners.
Crazy. There's only 14, right? So there's only
With
3
no
left.
fleet, Napoleon is stranded in Egypt.
Yep.
What's more, most of his army's cash has gone down with L'Orient. But Napoleon does not despair. If anything, he is invigorated by the crisis. His options are now simple. He and his army must support themselves in this foreign land, or perish. While General Desaix is sent south in pursuit of Murad Bey, Napoleon sets about reforming the administration of Egypt.
Of course he does.
The old feudal system is abolished. A postal service and hospitals are set up, and a new tax system introduced.
One thing I'm curious about, and I'd like to have a little bit more depth on, perhaps there's a book on this. I would love to read a book, not on Napoleon's battles and his victories and the military strategy and stuff, but rather of the administrative reforms that he took in these various countries and what happened afterwards, right? So he was in Malta for 6 days, right, on his Ryanair flight, and he reformed the whole bloody system. But then what happened afterwards? Did the system stay in place? Was it then eventually changed? By whom? How long did it last for? And that's what I'm curious about as well here, because 10 years after, when he's nowhere close to Egypt, what then happened to all this? What happened at these schools? What happened at these hospitals? Were they just maintained and continued and paid for in whatever manner? Were they abandoned? What about the government structure? That's what I'm curious about, is how did all these sort of institutions change and what happened to them? I think that's a really interesting topic.
Napoleon establishes the Institute of Egypt for scientific and scholarly research.
Okay, maybe he'll answer that.
He shows great interest in and respect for Islam, funding the construction of mosques and encouraging the observance of religious festivals. Such engagement later leads to rumors that Napoleon actually converted to Islam. But it is merely a tactic to curry local favour. Napoleon also grapples with news that his wife, Josephine, has resumed her affair with an ex-lover. It is, he's told, common knowledge amongst Paris society. He consoles himself with affairs of his own, including one with an officer's wife.
Oh, nice. So just one of your own officers, okay.
All the while, French efforts to win over the local population are failing. Most Egyptians see only foreign occupiers and infidels. The situation is already at boiling point. Minor revolts break out across the Nile Delta, which are brutally suppressed by the French. Then in September, from Constantinople, Sultan Selim III declares a holy war against the French. Now, the situation in Egypt is about to explode. Cairo, the 21st of October, 1798. General Dupuy, Cairo's military governor, is called out to break up a disturbance. He finds the locals erecting barricades, is set upon and killed. Soon the whole city is up in arms. The French fight back with ruthless discipline and crush the revolt. Some 300 French soldiers are killed, alongside several thousand Egyptians. Napoleon ostentatiously pardons the ringleaders, while quietly telling Berthier that every rioter caught with a weapon is to be beheaded and thrown into the Nile. The French have bloodily reasserted control in Cairo.
Temporarily.
But it is clear, Napoleon will never win the hearts and minds of the Egyptians.
Furthering the question, what then happened to these other... I mean, did they even get off the ground, right? You can't just build a hospital in a week.
The next few months see the French languish in Cairo. There is limited communication with France, much homesickness, and a dwindling supply of stores, ammunition, and wine.
Breakout.
There is also
most important thing, alcohol.
Outbreak of bubonic plague, which torments the army and further thins its ranks. The only action is in the south, where General Desaix's column, 2,800 men, pursue Murad Bey deep into Upper Egypt. In this epic chase, one officer distinguishes himself. A 28-year-old cavalry brigadier named Louis-Nicolas Davout.
Another familiar face.
On the 22nd of January 1799, he and Desaix inflict a serious defeat on Murad Bey, scattering his remaining forces. Murad himself escapes and remains at large. But such military victories do little to change the outlook for Napoleon's expedition. They remain 1,600 miles from France, with no prospect of reinforcements or getting home. Napoleon briefly puts his hopes on a diplomatic solution. France's foreign minister, the brilliant, urbane and slippery Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, had been an early supporter of the Egyptian expedition. He's assured Napoleon that he will personally travel to Constantinople to smooth relations with the Sultan and win Egypt for France.
Interesting.
But Talleyrand never leaves Paris.
I was gonna say.
The Sultan remains furious at France's attack on his Egyptian province. There is to be no negotiation and no compromise. Orders have gone out to every corner of the Ottoman Empire to raise troops to drive out the French invader. Napoleon's position looks more desperate than it's ever been. His troops cut off, disease-ridden, in the midst of a hostile population. he will respond in the way that seems obvious to him, as it would to his hero Alexander. He will attack. One of the most important skills for any historian is to be able to critically evaluate sources of information.
True.
Who's sharing it, why, and what's their bias? Napoleon himself, for example, was a notoriously unreliable narrator of his own life. Today, we need these critical skills just to navigate the media landscape. Take the war in Ukraine. Anyone following the conflict knows that information varies from reliable to biased to outright fabrication.
This is very weird.
But which is which? Now there's a website and app that helps you to understand where your news is coming from. Ground News.
I knew it was, I thought it was Ground News. Either way, okay, that was very weird. It's just weird to hear the epic history TV narrator talk about Ukraine, but anyways, attack and then leave. But that's the next part. Thank you very much for joining me on this one. We will definitely check out the next video, of course. That was great. I wasn't too sure about the 3D animations, but that was a good amount of information. And what can I say? It's Epic History TV. It's one of the best content creators on YouTube. Go support them. Go support their Patreon as well. And yeah, I'm curious what happened to all these institutions. If you happen to know, write a comment down below. If you have a video that you'd recommend checking out on this exact topic, I'd be very curious to see. And yeah, thank you all very much. Thank you again for your patience. My apologies. More videos on the way. Thank you again. See you in the next one.